Last winter, 5-year-old Haley Cummings disappeared from her father's trailer home in Satsuma, Florida, and there has been no sign of her since. 8 months after the disappearance of Haley Cummings, her whereabouts remain a mystery.
Somebody has her and they have her hid. I just want my daughter back, that's it.
Haley's father, Ronald, was working the overnight shift as a crane operator on the night of February 9th. When he returned home, his daughter was gone.
She wasn't there when I got home.
Attention immediately focused on Ronald's girlfriend, 17-year-old Misty Croslin, who was babysitting Haley and her brother, Ronald Jr.
About 8 o'clock, and I woke up, and she was gone. And the back door was wide open. And the last time I seen her was when I put her in bed.
Misty and Ronald Cummings married a month later, but have recently separated.
All right, move forward.
Police launched an extensive search for Haley after her disappearance. Officials say they've received more than 4,000 tips, but appear no closer to knowing what happened to Haley than they were that February morning when she disappeared. Haley Cummings' 6th birthday was in August. Here with us exclusively this morning is her stepmother, the last person to see her, Misty Cummings. Good morning, Misty.
Good morning.
This week, I know you had a tough setback in your life. Your husband, Ronald, announced publicly that he wants to divorce you. This is Haley's dad, and he said that there are inconsistencies in your story that bother him. He has supported you from day one. Why do you think he's changing now?
He tells me it's, just too much pressure on us right now. And, I got family problems. My family's trying to start problems. It's just too hard.
So you think he's divorcing you because the stress of all this is just too hard?
Yeah.
What do you think really happened? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe to the Dark Unveiling for more untold stories.
What else so bad? Have you heard that my bond got lowered or anything?
They took it from 100,000 to 50,000 or something like that.
So it's at 50,000 now?
Yeah, our Harris called yesterday and said somebody at the bottom was trying to come up with the money to get you out.
Okay. Tell him.
We was willing to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how long? Can you keep calling him and asking him?
Yeah, he's going to keep in contact with us.
I see Austin and Lindsay. Yeah. They're... you can't see him yet. Is she talking to Tommy?
Yeah.
Mama, he needs to...
How do you see Tommy? Austin and...
Oh, I thought I just seen him walk behind you.
Oh, you probably did. Let's go get the monitor.
Oh.
Oh, God, baby, I miss you so much.
You guys are gonna come see me every... Did you guys... What about Talent?
I called Talent, and Talent said he don't think he can come up here.
Why?
I don't know. He didn't tell me why. Maybe talk to him.
So he's not gonna come visit me?
I don't think so.
What about Write Me?
He said he tried to...
Before prison walls, chains, and courtrooms became her reality, Misty Croslin was an ordinary young woman living in rural Florida, far removed from the nightmare that would later define her life. She was barely in her 20s, unaware that a single night would pull her into one of the most disturbing and controversial cases in modern true crime history. But before we go any further, welcome to the channel. Here we search for the truth hidden in the shadows of cold cases and closed files, the details often overlooked, the questions rarely answered. If you value this kind of deep dive investigation, consider subscribing and becoming part of this growing community. And as we begin this journey together, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Whether you're joining us from the United States, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else in the world, leave a comment below. These stories may be local, but their impact reaches far beyond borders. On the night of February 9th, 2009, Misty Croslin was the last known person to see 5-year-old Haley Cummings alive. By morning, the child had vanished without a trace. What began as a desperate search for a missing child quickly turned into a national obsession. Media vans flooded a once quiet neighborhood. Cameras followed every movement. And at the center of it all stood Misty, young, overwhelmed, and suddenly facing suspicion from an entire country. As investigators searched for answers, Misty's statements raised troubling questions. Her timeline shifted. Her explanations didn't always align. Public opinion turned swiftly and mercilessly. To millions watching from the outside, she became more than a witness. She became a suspect in the court of public opinion long before any charges were filed. Years passed, and the focus slowly shifted. While Hallie's disappearance remained unsolved, authorities pursued Misty on unrelated drug charges. In 2010, she was sentenced to decades behind bars. Though never convicted in connection to the child's disappearance, Misty Croslin was officially transformed from a young woman under scrutiny into a permanent inmate of the prison system. This was the moment her true nightmare began. Behind the headlines and beyond the courtroom cameras lay a far darker reality, one where isolation, fear, and psychological pressure replaced freedom. Prison was no longer an abstract threat. It became her world. And for Misty Croslin, life behind bars would soon prove to be something many inmates describe as worse than death itself. This is where her prison story truly begins. When the prison gates closed behind Misty Croslin for the first time, the weight of reality finally settled in. This was no holding cell, no temporary setback. This was the beginning of a sentence that would stretch across decades, time measured not in days or months, but in lost years and fading hope. Misty entered the prison system carrying a label few inmates escape: the woman tied to a missing child. Inside, that reputation followed her like a shadow. In prison, the details of a case rarely matter. Facts blur, rumors spread, and what remains is a single, dangerous narrative. For Misty, it meant constant scrutiny from other inmates and an unspoken target placed on her back from day one. Though she was never convicted in connection with Hallie Cummings's disappearance, the stigma proved just as powerful as a guilty verdict. In the closed world of prison, perception is reality, and perception can be deadly. Guards offered no special protection. The system moved on. Misty was left to survive on her own. Daily life behind bars was a cycle of isolation and fear. The noise never stopped. Metal doors slamming, distant shouting, the echo of footsteps in long concrete corridors. Sleep came in fragments. Trust was dangerous. Silence often felt safer than speaking. Every interaction carried risk, and every day demanded vigilance. What made her punishment even harder to comprehend was the nature of her conviction. Decades in prison, not for murder, not for violence, but for drug-related offenses. To many observers, the sentence felt crushingly disproportionate. To Misty, it felt like being buried alive while the world outside slowly forgot her name. With no clear path to redemption and no closure for the case that defined her public image, prison became a place of psychological erosion. Time didn't heal. It hollowed. Each year behind bars deepened the sense that her life had been frozen at the moment everything went wrong. This wasn't justice in the traditional sense. It was something colder, something quieter, a punishment without resolution. And as the days turned into years, one haunting question lingered inside those prison walls. How do you survive a sentence when the world has already decided who you are? Prison is governed by rules no handbook ever explains. Beyond the posted regulations and daily counts exists another system, one built on fear, reputation, and unspoken consequences. For Misty Croslin, learning these rules was not optional. It was a matter of survival. From the moment she settled into prison life, Misty understood that her past followed her everywhere. Whispers traveled faster than facts. Inmates talked. Stories twisted. And once a narrative takes hold inside prison walls, it becomes nearly impossible to escape. Being associated, rightly or wrongly, with a child's disappearance placed her among the most vulnerable inmates in the system. Isolation became both punishment and protection. Keeping to herself reduced immediate danger, but it came at a cost. Human connection disappeared. Days blurred into one another, marked only by counts, meals, and the slow march of time. Conversations were brief. Eye contact was measured. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. the psychological toll was relentless. Prison doesn't need physical violence to break someone down. The constant awareness of threat, the lack of privacy, and the crushing weight of time do the work quietly. Anxiety became routine. Hypervigilance replaced peace. Every sound carried meaning. Every silence felt heavy. Misty also faced another kind of battle, one inside her own mind. Guilt, anger, confusion, and regret collided daily. Not just over her conviction, but over the unanswered questions that still haunted the case tied to her name. With no closure and no chance to clear the shadow hanging over her, the mental strain only deepened. In this environment, strength didn't look heroic. It looked like endurance, like waking up every day and making it through another count, like surviving without losing what remained of her identity. Prison stripped away more than freedom. It chipped away at the sense of self. For many inmates, hope comes in the form of release dates or appeals. For Misty, hope was fragile and distant. Each year behind bars reinforced a painful truth. Prison wasn't just where she lived. It was what her life had become. And yet, the system demanded she adapt. In prison, time is not measured the way it is on the outside. There are no milestones worth celebrating, no real sense of progress, only repetition. For Misty Croslin, days didn't pass. They piled up, each one identical to the last, each one pressing heavier than the one before. Long-term incarceration has a way of distorting the mind. Without freedom, choice disappears. Simple decisions, where to go, when to speak, how long to sleep, are no longer yours to make. Over time, this loss of control erodes something essential. Prison doesn't just confine the body. It slowly reshapes the way a person thinks, feels, and remembers who they used to be. For Misty, the psychological strain was compounded by uncertainty. There was no closure to the case that defined her public image, no resolution that could bring peace. The unanswered questions surrounding Hallie Cummings lingered constantly, reopening wounds and reinforcing the sense of being trapped in a story with no ending. Isolation intensified everything. Limited contact with the outside world meant fading relationships and missed moments, birthdays, funerals, life milestones that continued without her. Letters grew less frequent, phone calls shorter. The world moved on, while she remained locked in place. Mental health struggles are common in long sentences, and Misty was no exception. Depression crept in quietly. Anxiety became a constant companion. Hope, once fragile, began to feel dangerous. In prison, hope can hurt, because believing in a future you can't reach often makes the present unbearable. Some inmates begin to count down the days until release. Others stop counting altogether. For Misty, time stopped being a path forward and became an enemy, something to survive rather than embrace. This is why many who live it say prison can be worse than death. Death ends suffering. Prison stretches it, slowly, relentlessly. And as the years continued to pass, one question grew louder inside those walls. How much of a person can time take before there's nothing left? To understand why Misty Croslin is behind bars, it's important to separate public perception from legal reality, because the two are very different. Despite widespread belief, Misty Croslin was never convicted for the disappearance of Hallie Cummings. No murder charge, no kidnapping conviction, no verdict tying her directly to the child's fate. Yet she is serving a long prison sentence all the same. So what crime actually put her there? In 2010, Misty Croslin was convicted on multiple drug-related charges, including trafficking and conspiracy. Prosecutors argued that she was involved in the sale and distribution of prescription drugs. Under Florida's strict drug laws at the time, these charges carried severe mandatory sentences. When the judge handed down the ruling, Misty received decades in prison, a punishment many critics argued was extraordinarily harsh given the nonviolent nature of the offenses. To the legal system, the case was straightforward: drugs, evidence, conviction, sentence. But to the public, the timing raised questions. The charges came after months of intense media scrutiny tied to Halag's disappearance. Some believe the system was determined to punish her for something, anything, even if the most serious crime remained unproven. Inside prison, however, nuance doesn't exist. Other inmates didn't see a drug offender. They saw the woman connected to a missing child. That distinction didn't protect her, it endangered her. The result was a sentence that felt, to many observers, like a substitute punishment. A way to ensure Misty Croslin would never walk free, even without a conviction in the case that made her infamous. Whether that belief is fair or not remains a subject of debate, but the outcome is undeniable. Misty entered prison not as a violent criminal, but as a woman carrying the weight of a story far bigger than her conviction. A sentence rooted in drug crimes, yet fueled by public outrage and unresolved tragedy. And that contradiction, punished legally for one crime, condemned socially for another, is what makes her incarceration so controversial. For Misty Croslin, prison was only one part of the punishment. The other followed her everywhere, even behind concrete walls and steel doors. It was the judgment, relentless, permanent, unforgiving. Long before a judge pronounced her sentence, the public had already made up its mind. Television panels, online forums, and true crime discussions dissected her every word, her expressions, her past. In the age of viral headlines, suspicion became certainty, and once that image was formed, it never faded. Inside prison, that public judgment took on a dangerous life of its own. Inmates don't read court transcripts. They hear stories, simplified, distorted, stripped of context. To many around her, Misty wasn't a drug offender serving time. She was something far worse in their eyes. And in prison culture, certain labels can mark someone for life. There is no appeals process for reputation, no parole hearing for public opinion. Even good behavior, personal growth, or years of survival behind bars cannot erase a narrative once it takes hold. Misty carried a sentence that extended beyond her legal punishment, one enforced daily by whispers, stares, and isolation. Outside the prison walls, interest slowly faded. New cases emerged. New names replaced hers in the headlines. But obscurity didn't bring relief. It brought erasure, forgotten by the public, yet unable to escape the stigma that once defined her. This is the cruel paradox of modern justice. Society demands punishment, but rarely considers what happens after it's delivered. Prison becomes the end of the story, not the beginning of accountability or understanding. For Misty Croslin, judgment became permanent. Not written in law, but etched into memory, both hers and everyone else's. And as the years continue to pass, one truth remains uncomfortably clear. Some sentences don't end when the time is served. Misty Croslin's story does not offer easy answers. It exists in the uncomfortable space between law and perception, between what was proven in court and what was decided in the public imagination. She was never convicted in connection with the disappearance that made her infamous, yet she remains locked behind bars, serving decades for crimes that many argue do not match the severity of her punishment. Her prison nightmare reveals something deeper than one individual case. It exposes a system where unresolved tragedies leave lasting shadows, where suspicion can become a life sentence, and where prison is not merely a place of confinement, but a slow, psychological erosion. For Misty, incarceration meant more than lost freedom. It meant isolation, stigma, and a future defined by questions that may never be answered. This is why some describe prison as worse than death. Death is final. Prison is endless. It stretches suffering across years, forcing a person to live daily with regret, fear, and judgment, often without closure or redemption. But this story is not about defending or condemning. It's about understanding, about asking whether justice should punish only what can be proven, or whether it quietly allows public outrage to shape outcomes. It challenges us to consider how many people are serving sentences not just for their crimes, but for the stories attached to their names. As we step away from this case, the questions remain. Did the system deliver justice, or simply ensure punishment? And how many others are living similar nightmares, unseen and unheard behind prison walls? If this story made you think, reflect, or question what you thought you knew, you're not alone. These are the stories that live in the shadows, waiting to be examined, not sensationalized. And here on this channel, we'll continue searching for the truth hidden behind closed files, unanswered questions, and the dark realities of the justice system.